Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our workshop this evening. We are going to get some wonderful information and opportunity to share ideas, I believe. And so we're excited that you could join us. And I'm going to turn it over to Kristen to introduce our keynoters this evening.
Hi, everybody. My name is Kristen Young, she, her pronouns. I'm on staff for the Hawaii Conference and Central Union Church of Honolulu. And it is through these roles that I've come to know the speakers who I have the pleasure of introducing this evening. They were all very humble in their short bios on the website. Their titles and degrees are not the most interesting and valuable aspects of who they are, but I do want to brag about them a little and acknowledge that we are in the presence of individuals who are accomplished in many ways, including in academia and their communities. So, all right, let's get to it. If you attended the church leaders event last February, I'm sure you remember Jeff from his workshop on growing the next generation. Jeffrey Tangonan Miguel Acido has a PhD in education and a Master of Theological Studies from Pacific School of Religion in Berkeley. He has been a professor at the University of Hawaii and was an instructor for the Hawaii cohort as part of the TEL program through PSR and the Hawaii Conference. This fall, he will return to PSR for a Master of Divinity. He is interested in developing theological and spiritual leaders rooted in indigenous and ancestral wisdom. Kevin Barbasa Fayer, hey Kevin, is a popular educator rooted in the ahupua'a of Ewa Beach and Kalihi. He graduated with bachelor's in business and finance at UH Manoa. He is most passionate about liberation pedagogy and using fashion and textiles to tell counter-narrative stories that challenge the status quo. Kevin runs the Swap Link, a community effort to bring together vintage connoisseurs to showcase their catalog, to sell, swap, and sustain. Kevin is a full-time caregiver for his father, and I would also like to note that he was the program manager and director of Kalihi Valley Instructional Bike Exchange, K-Vibe, the awesome youth program of Kokua Kalihi Valley that we heard about in Jeff's workshop in February. Debieh Ramos Miguel Acido was born and rooted in Wailua, Hawaii. She is a substance use recovery counselor and just graduated with a Master of Social Work. Woo! Debbie is called to address the health and well-being of underserved communities. Debbie and Jeff are partners, in case you were wondering, and they are raising the next generation right at home with their daughter, Wyatt. Cassie Chee is an artist, a preacher, a recent Master of Divinity graduate, yay, and works as a community organizer with Faith Action for Community Equity, a grassroots interfaith nonprofit organization unlike any other in Hawaii. Through Faith Action, she has recently helped to start and lead a transformative justice task force. Cassie is passionate about co-creating and building power locally to imagine more loving and just worlds. Cassie, along with Jeff, are members in Discernment, discerning ordination in the United Church of Christ. And as for me, Debbie requested that I add myself as a presenter on the website. So that's why I'm up there. I'd say my credibility is simply that I am a young person who has grown up in the Hawaii Conference, UCC, and is still around for now. I'm excited about the vision that will be shared here tonight by us, by all of you, and excited for what might emerge among all of us here in yet another Zoom Talk Story session. So thank you for your patience and presence, and I will pass it on to Debbie or Jeff and mute myself. Thanks.
Oh, mahalo so much, Kristen, for those beautiful introductions. Thank you.
Can you, we'll have to mute our daughters. She's watching some.
We're
keeping her busy in educational workshops. Thank you all for attending and being present and sharing us with your evening. It's sort of a short, just I'll spend maybe the first couple minutes just sort of framing our time together, a very short time together. It's only an hour. And so, you know, it's an opportunity for us again. If you attended that sort of the last workshop, I presented a little bit of a vision, and this is one more step towards that. And now we have kind of a team that's sort of envisioning what that means for growing of faith, social justice leaders, and spiritual leaders within the conference and outside of it. And so this is the team. Debbie and me, we have a daughter, Waya, right there smiling. I think she's like 8 months at that time.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I think for us this is kind of our our working statement, a vision of Holu Alakai, growing leaders, or to grow because we are leaders, to grow the next generation of faith and spiritual leaders in Hawaii. And the next generation of faith leaders will imagine new ways of seeing the church and innovate ways of doing ministry for social change, while rooted in the diverse values of Hawaii. And really sort of the pedagogy and sort of where we're coming from, the framework, the philosophy is rooted really behind being inspired by social movements around the globe, and whether it's sort of the third world liberation front or the Hawaiian Renaissance movements in the 90s, maybe starting in the 70s, movements for social equity, and sort of and primarily actually liberation theology, just to be transparent with everybody. So this is the group that we ran. It's similar pedagogy. So you see a sort of a diverse community with R2W, a Represent to Witness, that was run out of the Pacific School of Religion. Here in Hawaii, I helped run a Vai Summer Fellow program in which underserved community members and young people, junior and senior in high school, have a chance to be part of a sort of a health program at community at Kokua Kalihi Valley, and it's sponsored by the University Medical School in collaboration with KKV to develop young leaders who want to enter the field of health, an expansive definition of health practitioners, and that includes social workers, that includes translators, but that includes also community organizers and faith leaders, addressing the health disparities, primarily in rural areas and in underserved areas. And so it's a sort of a diverse group. These are beautiful pictures. The top left is at Ho'olu Aina in the back of Kalihi Valley, and on the right side is sort of growing gardens in our Kuhio Park Terrace, or KPT, or actually they want to be called now the Towers of Kuhio. So they're rebranding their housing projects. And then you have more sort of local groups in Pearl City Community Church called A'ali'i Consciousness, in which we took some young folks, again, sort of a diverse young folks, to go and visit our history, particularly Asian American and Pacific Island history, going to Angel Island, going to the San Francisco Bay Area to see where it all started. And some of our Native Hawaiian movements actually was inspired by the occupation of Alcatraz, our Native Hawaiian sisters and brothers who reclaimed the land, and that sort of inspired a little bit of a Hawaiian Renaissance movement. So it was important for us to bring young people to see the roots and inspiration of social change and changing status quo in our community. And so and that's it actually, in terms of just an example of how do you operationalize the kind of vision that we have. And in all transparency, the R2W program was a $1.5 million program. The K-Vibe program that Kevin Fowler ran was a $1.5 to $2 million program for about 4 years. And the Holu, the A'ali'i consciousness that's rooted in Pearl City Community Church. Again, this was all volunteer, but if you monetize the resources that we use, that's about $150,000 to $200,000 a year spending on youth. And so it costs money to develop leadership. But we have Kristen, Cassie, Kevin, and Debbie to sort of just talk with you and talk with us in terms of what are some of the challenges, the questions and challenges and opportunities for growing the young leaders within the church and outside of the church, spiritual leaders rooted in faith and in spirituality, and using that as a framework for social change. And so, we have questions to ask each other, but if you have questions that you want to ask some of the presenters, feel free to sort of put it in the chat, and what you think that can bring about a kind of movement within our dear institution, within the UCC Hawaii Conference, or within Hawaii in itself, that can inspire some youth and young adult. I know that it's not a secret that we don't have too many youth and young adults now in the pews and in our church. And so how do you address that? How do you create that kind of energy so that the young people can inherit both the structure and transform the current spirit in what we want to do now? And so, Kristen, Cassie, Kevin, Debbie, if there's anything sort of that, maybe we start with Cassie first, and then we go to, and then Cassie can call upon folks, sort of any thoughts and comments or questions that you have. So why is this perhaps important to you, Cassie? And what do you see sort of what's happening within our church community, given that your role in faith and also a member of Pearl City Community Church?
Sure. Hi, everybody. Good evening. So my name is Cassie. I feel like, let me introduce myself as we usually do in our meetings. We usually go around, and this is something I learned from Debbie, Jeff, and Kevin, but we do name, home, and ancestor. So my name is Cassie Chee. Home for me is here in Honolulu is where I live right now. It's also the Pacific Northwest, Duwamish land, Kirkland, Washington, right outside of Seattle. Let's see. I think home for me is also Japanese Presbyterian Church, which is in Seattle, and that's where I grew up. So since my family is from here, and my family is also Korean immigrants to Los Angeles, Japanese Presbyterian Church was really my home growing up, and that's the place where I first learned love. That's the place where I first learned community. That's the place where I first learned God. And I loved it there. I love church so much because of that. And then when I went to college, I started getting involved in campus ministry. And the summer before I started was when Michael Brown was murdered by the police. So there was this kind of big swell in the Black Lives Matter movement. And I really could not wrap my head around it, to be honest. I was like, I don't understand why we're talking about race when we should be talking about Jesus. And that was just a really pivotal point for me, where through relationships with my Black friends, I just realized, like, oh my gosh, I can't claim to love people and to love Jesus if I don't know what that means for people that are suffering right now around me on my campus, right? So I started doing Black campus ministry. I was totally in over my head. I learned what it meant to lead as a guest. I learned what it meant to be wrong all the time. And then there was so much more I had to learn about who God is and also who God is not. So from there, that's where I decided I wanted to go to seminary. And the question that I was asking at that time was, who is God for those among us who are most oppressed? And at that time, I was asking that question in particular about Black people and about people of the LGBTQ community. So I was in seminary and I was asking those questions. And then I guess I'm skipping around here, but name, home, and ancestor is the third part. An ancestor I'm going to bring in is my grandma who lives here. Her name is Dorothy Keynoters. And a couple years ago, my grandfather passed away. And so now she is the only one living here. Her two sons are on the mainland still. So I just felt like, oh my gosh, I need to come and I need to be close with my grandma. Like my grandma's aging, but I want to come back and I want to be close with her. So during seminary, I moved here. I interned at Central Union Church with some of you. And that was kind of an opportunity for me to return home here, return to roots here. And so now I think I'm asking that same question that I was asking when I went to seminary, which is, who is God for those among us who are most oppressed? And when I talk to I'm 25, when I talk to a lot of people around my age, like in their 20s and 30s, there's such a deep spiritual connection and there's such a deep I think, love for like God or the divine, but there's also a lot of hurt a lot of times from, you know, what is religion or what is institutional church. And I think a lot of us can understand that, right? So I'm really interested in what does it mean to be reimagining community and reimagining church, while also deeply respecting the tradition that we have, you know, inherited from our aunties and uncles, from our grandmas and grandpas, you know. And I think that that work just really needs to be done. And there's translation work that needs to happen, and also healing work that needs to happen in order for, you know, the next generation of leaders to kind of step into what the future of church is and what the future of faith and spirituality is. So that's kind of my story. And I got up to be a part of this team because I actually came and watched Jeff give this presentation like a year ago. When was it? February or something? And I was like, oh my gosh, like this is what we need to be doing. So that's kind of me. I'll stop there. I will invite Kristen. Let me also say, Kristen is such a humble person. She gave such generous introductions to all of us, and Kristen's really here, like running this whole conference as I know it behind the scenes.
Okay, well, hi. I love listening to Cassie. She teaches me so much. I'm just like 1 year older than her, but we worked together and sang together when she was interning at Central Union Church. And then yeah, I got connected with Debbie and Jeff and Kevin. And I have been in the Hawaii conference, grew up at UCC Judge Street, and then in college did an internship at Nu'uanu Congregational Church, which was kind of like this program, oulu Alaka, I think, that we're talking about a little bit. And they gave a stipend for 10 weeks for us to just kind of be in the church, for college interns to be in the church. And that was when I really first, just had the opportunity to actually, do ministry and then get paid for it. And I have not gone to seminary or anything yet, but from there, I've been able to connect with Lanai Union Church and then Central Union Church, where I am now, working with youth. And yeah, as a young person, I like to work with youth, and I think I've always felt, I don't know, I think I have, I don't know what we're supposed to do as youth. Like sometimes I think I don't want to carry on the church that you know has been built. I want to change it completely, or I don't know. So that's what I'm kind of excited about, with just having other young people to like vision new things with. I don't even remember what the question was, but let me go back and do. So I said name. Home is close by to the conference office in Honolulu, Makiki area. And then ancestor that I'll bring with me is, I'll just say all the people that I've gotten to know through the different church communities. It was not my intention to be in the church still at this point in my life, but I just can't say no and get out of it. So I'm here, and yeah, I don't know if there was another question, but I'm just gonna pass it on to Kevin right now.
Hello. I will practice my accords and say I pass. I will pass it on to Debbie. We have rules in this engagement. You have the rules to pass, but you do not have the right to disengage. So I will pass and I hand that off to Debbie.
Thanks, Brother Kevin, and thank you for always reminding me of our accords. So aloha, everyone. My name is Debbie. Home for me is Waialua and Kalihi and in the Ilocos. I would say an ancestor I'd love to bring with me today. I'd love to actually bring my mother. Yeah, she's been really inspirational, and she grew up Catholic, and and I think she really wanted to put me in in a Catholic church and teach me religion. But as a person working like 2 full-time jobs and like trying to take care of like our household of 3, so she's like so busy. Nobody can request for a Sunday off and go to church. So I gotta admit that I actually am not someone who grew up in a church. I have this running joke with myself that I'm kind of unchurched. It's not because I was never interested in Jesus or was never interested in knowing about Jesus. It was that I didn't grow up in a community who taught me how to build a relationship with Jesus or how to read, the Bible or attending service. So I didn't grow up in that, in that. And frankly, I was kind of, some part of me felt a little thrown off because when people understood that about me, they were very judging. They were judging me. They were shaming me. They were like, oh, now you have to come. So it was like a forced invitation to attend because I might get like swiped or something, or, but just in all full honesty, it's just that I didn't grow up in that sense. And it wasn't because I was ever not interested. It's just, I wish someone took the time, and maybe Sister Cassie, if she met me at like 15, my 15-year-old self, maybe she would inspire me to attend church. And, I, as a young person speaking from a place that has not yet, didn't grow up in the church, I think these are some things that are very interesting to work on projects. How do we engage our youth and young people to come into a church? I'm pretty sure there's a lot of people like me who are very loving and very justice oriented and wanting to do good in the world, but yet haven't found that way to a church. And so, my hope is that this program can actually build relationship to faith or bring in young people in ways that they can help to help and lift up and rebuild communities and strengthen love all around. So yeah, that's a little bit about me. So I actually recently graduated from the University of Washington, the master's program in social work. So yay, very exciting. I really just got the approval like maybe an hour before this call. So these are for sure, I'm getting my MSW. So frankly, even before thinking about my MSW, I was not, I wouldn't say I wasn't someone who actually was very involved in a lot of community building or even involved in a lot of youth development. So I really had a rough time going to school. I had a rough time connecting with community. I had a rough time even getting into school. So it looks nice now as getting a master's degree, but before that, my path was everywhere. But luckily, in the community, there was actually a program similar to what we are very much proposing, as to bring young people like me to become integrated and connected with community, integrated and connected with resources and connected to people. And that is kind of a way how I was able to navigate my own self, and even into going into school and connecting with community. And now I'm even connected to a faith community. And so to me, that's, I think that's kind of such an amazing process, because my parents, actually, I'm the first generation college student, second generation immigrant. So my parents are from the Philippines. And so they don't know how to navigate, in Hawaii. Their English is limited, but they were just they really wanted what was best for me. But at the same time, people kind of don't know where their resources are and where loving, kind people are. And so it's thankfully there were youth programs in the past that actually helped me get through and navigate my way through life. And so I think that's kind of the more important reason why I feel like these programs are really important for young people. Despite even working with young people, I'm actually more of an intergenerational type of person, where I would like to see even older I love working with our elders, our kapunas. So it's even though I'm working with younger folks, I always want the older adults to be included. Anyway, yeah, so Kuya Kevin, if you're actually ready to check in with us, would you like to?
Oh, no, I don't like, just kidding. Hello, sons and daughters of liberation. I kind of, I used to do that, or I still do that. I used to do that with young kings and queens in Kalihi Valley, ages as old as 7 years old. and as young as 77. Reason why I say as young, it's just crazy how like how much responsibilities that young men or young women inherit at in spaces, or just yes, how much responsibilities that seven-year-old people have. And when I say that, I just can recall a name home ancestor circle with the young men of K-Vibe. This one 7-year-old boy, we did name home an ancestor that taught you how to cook, or an ancestor that cooks you breakfast. And this young, everyone was going, mom, 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 and then grandma. And then when someone said dad, people giggled, I guess because it's not such a macho thing to do. When someone said grandpa, they giggled or whatever. Don't your mom cook? Then another boy goes, I don't have a mom. It just gets deep, right? But one of the 7-year-old boy, he goes, I cook breakfast. I cook breakfast for my 6-year-old brother, for my 4-year-old sister, for my 3-year-old cousin. And it goes on. And then there's 77-year-old uncles that come to the bike shop that just want a flat tire or fix a flat tire, and brought a man his own kid. Like you could just see his youthful energy when there's intergenerational spaces. So as old as 7, as young as 77. My name is Edward Kevin Barbasa Falier. Home for me is Lukban, Quezon in Evo Beach. Lukban, Quezon in the Philippines, Evo Beach, and Kalihi here in Oahu. And actually, home is in circles where we can share our names, where we can share our homes, and then also share a space where our ancestors can both dance. Because at the end of the day, when we honor our ancestors, they just feel really happy. And when you're happy, people dance. So let's start to dance, my friends. Name home ancestor. The person that I am thinking of today, man, I want to bring up my father. As Kristen mentioned, my dad is 65 now. Both my mom and dad are 65. They turned 66 next year, so that's when my mom can fully retire. My dad was gifted a stroke, or his 3rd stroke. And it was to a point where he needed full-time care, 24-hour care. I was doing such a cool thing with Kuya Jeff at the Debieh in Kalihi Valley, doing this program. We raised so much, I guess we want to say so much capital. And when we say capital, we raise so much social capital, the people, the community, the trust of parents, the trust of priests and religious folks that want to feel like they're blessed, be blessings. Like, yes, we will go on our knees to say we need donations, and amen. But regardless, we built this thing, and my dad happened to receive his 3rd stroke. So that's what took place. I had to step down from this thing. I was trying to listen. I think that's where my spirituality grown. Whereas where you start to take responsibility for those that are in most need. And at the time, not just because my dad is my dad, but he is in the most need. My mom was getting sick 2 out of the 4 weeks for 6 months straight, because she was the main caregiver. She was the one washing him, whatever. And I was in the back of my mind like, no, mom, you married the brother. That's your responsibility. That's your kuleana. I'm doing God's work. I was doing community work for the most oppressed, or what Cassie says, who are the most oppressed. And so happens here in Hawaii. We know that 3 of the biggest public housing units are in Kalihi Valley. So I'm not saying they're the most, but they are a population of focus that we need to identify as, or put that in that category. But yeah, so my mom was getting sick. And then I started getting sick because I seen my mom just unhappy. I seen my dad just like nosediving. We take them to care homes, and care homes feed them, they change them, but they say 0. They don't say I love you. They don't say God bless. They don't pray before meals. But yeah, so from there, something switch, something flipped. And I just, it was important for me. And the reason why I stepped down was maybe I had the cheapest salary. My mom had to stay at work to get insurance for my dad. My sister she just got her job as a nurse. So it kind of swapped places. My sister covers the mortgage. My mom is the insurance agent. Without her, we don't have insurance. And I am the full-time, or when people ask me what I do now, I got two answers. One, my vocation is being the dopest son that I can be now. And then two is I want to say it more proudly, but in spaces of spiritual or just churches, for me to be saying that I'm a soldier of God is something that may be looked at as differently, because I look differently, I talk differently, I praise differently, I pray differently. But what I do know that I'm spiritual enough to a point where I can honor everyone before me. And I am searching for a home. When I say that, I just feel spaces like this is home, where you can share names, homes, and ancestors. And that's what my soul looks for. So home is always just everywhere, as long as you can tap into the wisdom of our ancestors. Thank you.
Nice. Thank you, Kevin and Kristen and Cassie and Debbie and your life is as much of the movement as the movement that we participate in or we sort of partake in. And I think for us, I think this group, as dynamic and as spiritual, are trying to, when I met Kristen, I met Cassie and Kevin and Debbie, they were all trying to, well, at least we were all trying to figure out, as our politics and way of being accepted within the church. And maybe that leads to Kyle Lovett's question in terms of sort of like, what are your thoughts about the trajectory of folks like you, younger and engaged and dynamic and full of life? Well said. And the traditional bricks and mortar expression of church and what church looks like. I have to sort of highlight one, Cassie's doing a great job sort of organizing folks through faith and organizing and facing justice at the same time. Kevin has brought together gangs, and these are loving people from gangs of Mayor Rights, KPT, and Cam 4. I have never seen anybody bring together all these three gangs and have a meal together. I haven't seen any pastor done that. I haven't seen any lay people. I mean, I've seen Kevin do that. I said, where do you get that? And he says, well, and when I listen to him in these circles, there's a certain kind of spirituality that these young, particularly boys, men and boys that go to. There is a certain spirituality that I see, like Kristen and Debbie and Cassie, that a lot of, one instance, a lot of folks go up to them and say, I have a particular faith or orientation that I don't know if it's accepted within my church. And they seem to hold that space for them. I'm not sure if there's a space for the space holders themselves so that they can sort of practice within the church or outside. And so I think they're starting to reimagine, again, sort of, how do we do that? How do we grow spiritual? And sometimes I say spiritual because sometimes the young people that they deal with may not subscribe to Jesus as their Lord and personal Savior. They might be operating from the Hongganji next door who was attracted, and that's primarily me. I was at the Jikoen Hongganji, sitting in the temple, and I said, I love this place, and I love learning the teachings of Buddha. But I also love the propheticness of Christianity, the propheticness of Jesus, that sort of in the front of the marches demanding justice. I sort of really gravitated towards that. Not all of my family or my friends. Sometimes we're eating lunches by ourselves. That's why that's why we formed this group, because we're tired of eating lunch and dinner by ourselves. But how do we create that space? And is there movement enough within the UCC Hawaii to create structures, and also not also not just sort of in, but sort of support. Oftentimes and let me end, but we're here and we can start to address questions. Cassie sort of helped me realize this. Why is it when we do youth work, it's the least paid position within the church? When you talk about, and when you have inexperienced people, somehow you throw them into youth work as if that's like the lowest priority. Well, if you do that, we have the same problems as now when we look into the pews. We don't see the young people now. So maybe it's a structural thing to answer part of that question. Can we create a structure in which it grows the young people, not assimilate people into the old structures of the church? I certainly know least about the UCC, but I know enough in terms of creating spaces for people who want to voice a dissenting view within the church, and to see what we can build from that. But primarily, how do we grow? I know Cassie, Kristen, and Kevin, we all actually deal with and have a certain love for our Micronesian community churches. And there needs to be said 100 prayers every day. One, we had a young man, our young student baby, SciCap. I remember SciCap was a student of our program who was murdered a couple months ago. And so how do we grow faith? How do we grow? I mean, I've seen certainly sentiments within our own church that echoes the horrendous comments of every article that has a label Micronesian. What kind of faith are we growing that can challenge that structure? And I can tell you within even our own, I'll stop a little bit, but I'm Filipino. And man, I asked my Filipino family how you feel about this particular group. And it's almost like they've been given permission to be prejudiced and to be racist. Like, why are you telling me this out in the open? You're not even hiding it. And you go to church. So how do you reconcile that particular outlook and faith at the same time? So there needs to be a greater pedagogical, theological space, I think, led by the Kristens and the Cassies and the Kevin, that can sort of create that space that it's not judgmental. You're not going to get canceled because you have that view, but there's an invitation to grow and to grow into the kingdom of God as we sort of imagine. And so Casey, Kristen, Kevin, we have sort of says, what structures would support you as space holders? And I'll give it to you folks. Maybe we can start with Cassie, and then you can pick somebody else to start.
Yeah, I want to back up to Reverend Kyle's question, actually, like, what are your thoughts about the trajectory of folks like you in relationship to the traditional brick and mortar expression of the church? My Korean name is Shinchil, which means fruit of faith. And I really feel like, that's what my life is. And I feel like that's what a lot of my peers' life is. I know that my faith and whatever my spirituality is now does not like come out of a vacuum. It comes out of like my harmony going to church 5 a.m, before the sun, and praying for me and praying for our generation. And I think that like brick and mortar kind of, traditional sense of church as an immigrant, that meant so much to her. And that meant so much to my family. And I think that's why as much as there are things that kind of, I feel tension with in traditional sense of church, I have a lot of respect for that, because that was space that felt safe. That was space where they felt loved. And that was space where the community could really organize. That's how my family survived in Los Angeles. So I think this question about like what the trajectory is I don't really know, but I think the community knows. And I think we as spiritual leaders are called by our community, and we have to listen to what feels safe, where do people feel love, and how can we organize so that people in our community feel love and we can all live, the kingdom of God here and now. So one place that I feel like I felt that is, open mics led by LGBTQ folks of color. They just are always making sure everyone feels safe in that room, that people can share their stories authentically, and without shame, right? And that people are loved unconditionally. And if there's one thing that I learned in church, it's always like to love people unconditionally, right? So I think that for me is kind of the bridge between, you know, what is the traditional sense of what we feel church is and like whatever the future of church is. And maybe it's less about defining what that is and us kind of redefining what kind of boundaries do we have around what church is and what makes church church. I think that's a question that I'm asking right now. And then, yeah, for the second one, just really quickly, I feel like structures that support us as space holders, I feel like as a young person, I'm always looking for mentors, and I'm always looking just to hear the stories of anyone that has come before me and why their faith means something to them. Because that I always learn so much from that, and just from hearing stories and from, yeah, so much love and support for the next generation. I've heard that so much from the UCC here, and I really appreciate that.
Hello again, sons and daughters of liberation. I think for, I guess, thank you, Kristen, for the beautiful intro. I do not call myself a popular educator yet. I am an aspiring popular educator. My mentors are popular educators like Jeffrey and Michael James and all the greats before us. But why I say that is I can only hold spaces in spaces that I feel comfortable in. So like, for example, if Kuya Jeff told me, hey, yo, we're gonna do a circle with 40 hammers in the church, I would probably say I cannot. But with open spaces and going into this with a group of other faith-based hammers, I feel comfortable doing this. But I guess for me as a practitioner, I think the most important thing is just support and just faith in the work. We've done popular education in 4 different projects, and all 4 seemed very, very much, it on paper, it looks like winning projects. And then what takes place after, I'm not too sure, and why it doesn't sustain. Obviously, there's different, I guess, yeah, Jeffrey and Debbie has family things to take care of, and Wyatt was born. My dad was also born, because now I'm wiping his ears and putting on diapers. So I got a baby now. But I guess what I think is needed is just a structure that says I support you and I believe in you, and whatever you're doing, keep doing it. We accept you for who you are, and for everything that you've done, and we want to support you to do more of that. I don't know what it's like to be fully supported, because in religion they say Jesus got you forever, just do, just go, just flow. But in the real world, when you're trying to do good work and God's work and work for other people, we don't get that same security. So to have that kind of security from, if it's a church, if it's a community, because we seen what it looks like at K-Vibe in Kalihi Valley. We were supported by the community, by funding and all of that. Obviously, if I made $100,000 doing this work, I probably would be able to take care of my dad, or my mom would be able to retire, and I could pay for insurance and all of that, and she could be the main caregiver or whatever. Not saying it's money-based, but we live in a money-based society. So all our decisions are just really dependent on that factor. No matter how much times I will go to church, or no matter how much times I will pray within the year, at the end of the day, if my bank account is 0, I will still not eat. Or if my bank account is 0, my dad will not have diapers. But just if there's a structure or a way to support just doing the work and saying, yo, let's see what we can do, and just having faith in it. I think that's something that is a small ask, because I know that we've done it before, and we've done it well, and now we have. I've grown in my spiritual practices, and I will know that there's mistakes that I've done that cannot be done again. And that's what experiences does, right? And that's what kupunaship does when you have mentors that care about you, that love you, that can teach you. Because at the end of the day, if it hasn't been done, there will be mistakes. We're saying we're not perfect, but we are saying that we are people of Christ, people of love, and people of justice. So I don't know if that answered the question, but yeah, just support, 1000% support and faith in the most good. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Cal. I felt so moved by your response, and and it's very true about like needing support, not only for whatever program or work we do, but also even financial support as well. And thinking of that, and also knowing that we will make mistakes, right? I think that's always how we learn. I would seriously give the same answer as Kevin, because as young people, we're living in such different times. As much as we use our ancestral wisdom and knowledge to help guide us, there are things that that we're crossing through and that have never done before. And so it's like we will make mistakes, and we cannot be punished for them, And so it'll frighten us, even fear to even want to do any more work if you keep punishing our mistakes. So it's definitely having that loving forgiveness is to like forgiving us when we make our mistakes and supporting us, because we're living also in a pandemic time where a lot of families have been affected by COVID, and financial losses has been real for many of our working class communities. Like despite Jeff and I, now we are like the first generation having a degree. We need to not only support our own families, like with our daughter, but we also take care of our parents as well. Like, helping them like pay for their mortgage, pay for their medical, because they are the first immigrants that came. And, our mothers cannot be working till they're 70 years old, cleaning hotel rooms. My mother is 70 years old at the Pagoda Hotel rooms, cleaning 15 rooms a day. And it's kind of shame a little bit, because sometimes I cannot clean my room in one day. Like I get only one room, but I can't even clean one room, and she gets 15. Like, so it's like we're the generation that is not only supporting ourselves and trying to grow in faith and grow in our community, but we're also the ones who are also supporting our own family members as well. So yeah, I think that what Kevin has mentioned is like it's the real reality too. It's because we also need to be financially stable as far as even in doing our work, and it's really hard because we love doing this work so much, but if it's not sustainable, we're gonna have to do another type of work to help us balance our finances. But anyway, I think the most ways to actually really just support us is really just giving a lot of your support and assistance and love, and forgive us when we mess up. So it's I think that's just, yeah, that's my answer to that question. I'm gonna pass it on to Kristen. I don't want to go over.
Okay, I'll go back to Kyle's question about brick and mortar expressions of church. I think during the pandemic, a lot of us have definitely thought about that a lot. I think for myself, if I wasn't working at the church, I don't think I would really want to go to church. And I wonder, I wonder how you pastors and clergy people feel as well. But yeah, for myself, I don't know what the trajectory is. I feel like there's such a diverse desire among young people to, yeah, just like what do you want church to be? Like lights and good music, or or like serving, or that stuff. So for me, I say sell the buildings and let's meet somewhere else that's free, a different place every week or something. But anyway, okay, so now for structures, I think I was really excited about yeah, just this program that Jeff and Debbie and Cassie and Kevin are working on, because it fits so well into our Hawaii Conference strategic initiatives. Number 4 comes to mind, gifts and wisdom of the next generation. And that's like allowing people under 40. See, we don't have many youth, so young people is just under 40 now. So allowing us to express our faith in different ways, even if it looks different. Maybe it's not having, increased church membership in that sense, but yeah, just try new things. And I think for support like this, we are always saying we want more young people, and we want to support young people. So here they are, here we are. Yeah, so I think all of you just being here and listening, yeah, that's a huge support. So I'll just stop there. Back to you, Jeff.
Thank you, Kristen, Cassie, Kevin, and Debbie, and I think the oldest one. I'm 36 years old, and I won't hesitate now to ask. I've gotten really braver now that I have a degree. That there's a tension within our church of servant ministry and what that means. And I think you can do servant ministry among middle class youth and young adult. It's harder to do servant ministry among working class youth and young adult, which means they have to provide for so much. Now the church is asking them to tax them even more for free. And so I think there's a certain responsibility. If you want to be really practical and answer that question, Eric, thank you for that. We gotta fund young people. We gotta fund young adults. These should be paid positions and stipends, and grow young leaders, particularly the poor and the working class. And the Hawaii Conference asked that question. It says, how does popular education connect with youths in minority communities, and your vision to raise indigenous liberation thinkers within this decision? It's really interesting, that question that connects again to poverty. Kevin talks about, well, we're aspiring popular educators and yet we don't feel comfortable within the church. Well, popular education is rooted in liberation theology. It was first practiced, at least you root by unions and folks who followed the gospels really well to change society and structures. So it's amazing that sentiment that Kevin has, he feels that he's not welcome in the church, even though his practice is rooted in biblical theology. So that contradiction is so telling. There's a preferential option in popular education and liberation theology to lift up minority voices and the oppressed. What does that say about our churches when our churches have silenced those who speaks in the margins, and particularly poor? Again, we've seen signs everywhere. If you're a refugee, you're welcome here. You're safe here.
If you're queer,
every business, you're queer, your business. If you're immigrant, you're not English speaker, you're Black, you're welcome here. All you have to attach is, if you're poor and queer, you're not welcome here. If you're poor and Black, you cannot eat here. If you're anything that you attach poor and poverty for, there's a disclaimer that needs to be made. And I think that's the preferential option. Can we innovate? What do we do with our poor communities? As a business response, can we have a sliding scale? Right? Those are radical approaches, I think, and that can be applied to churches. And I think that's where popular education is concerned. Our concern is to lift up the voices and the experiences in the margin. Perhaps, yes, race, class, and gender is the holy trinity of oppression or liberation, if you will. And so we hope this project can take on. But let me end, since we have 4 minutes left. I think we wanted to come out to you and to the community, say, can you support a vision like this? Can your church identify some young leaders and intergenerational and not old, but delightfully matured congregations to support a kind of project that empowers, but also pays young people to do this kind of work? I think it's needed. I think if we want to turn that church towards the Jesus movement, and not so much Christianity, but the Jesus movement, one that sort of loves thy neighbor unconditionally, I think we have to kind of invest in that infrastructure. And what is that? I think that's both spiritual and financial structure to do that. So, we have a couple minutes left, but if anybody wants to sort of type in any question or make a comment, or from Cassie, Debbie, Kristen, and Kevin. Go ahead.
Yeah, this is Sam from Lanakila Church. I'm one of the was there, and you guys are awesome, absolutely incredible, and that's one of the reasons why I got involved with the UCC, because as I travel around, I see most of our churches are getting, some of them are closed down, some of them the people are getting older. There's not too many young people left. I believe that you guys can, if we can somehow figure out a way to get to some of our churches to inspire, because some of the older folks, they say, I'm 77 years old. I've been doing this ministry for over 50 years. And for many years, I still work with the homeless population here in the Big Island, and trying to find housing, food, shelter, whatever. Because that is also social justice. They have a right for a place to live. And it will be a great opportunity if we can talk with our conference to have some of you guys come and do the presentation. And, because some of our kupunas, they think, oh, well, we have done this for 100 years, kind of thing. It's great to hear from you guys. You have the credential, you have the experience, and you're local, and you can connect with the congregation, because we are, as you know, the UCC, our churches are all congregational independent churches. The congregation makes a decision. So important that, sorry guys, that we, thank you for your presentation.
Yes.
Hi, it's Jolynn. My home is in Hanapepe, Hawaii, Kauai, and the ancestor that I bring to this table today is my dad, who raised me in the church through Sunday school. And I have a question for Kevin Failure. Kevin, I see what looks like hats in the background and clothing. And I'm wondering if that would be a space that you would consider, a space for comfort and security where you can establish or build faith relationships with youth, or am I off base?
Hello, Jolene. Well, thank you for that, or looking at my hats. Thank you. But this space here is called the Swap Link, and I am using this space for community building. We bring youth here to do book clubs. We bring young men here actually for spaces to do popular education. We do circles here. It's my uncle's space. It's not my space. He has a space here in downtown, and he has been struggling deeply within the COVID structures, and we're just blessed to even have the space open right now. We were supposed to shut down in June. Last month was supposed to be the last month of operations, but we held one last event. So I do this thing called the Swap Link, which is kind of like the Swap Meet, but we bring vintage curators and vintage collectors together, and we do like a one-day event where people who hunt mu'umu. So we have one person that hunts mu'umu'us. So we have like 1940s, 1950s, 60s, 70s aloha shirts, mu'us. We have Les Murukami, the baseball coach. We have his jersey right here in the flesh. But we use this space to do that, and then we add popular education on it. So people are coming to shop vintage, and then when we start asking questions like name, home, ancestor, they're like, what is this? But it allows us the conversation or the fabrics allows us the conversation to jump time. Like time is inexistent because the nostalgia of like a bowling alley that closed down. One of our peoples brought in their parents, and then the parents pulled out the bowling shirt, and they're like, "Yo, this is where me and my wife's first date was," which produced this person, my friend. So with fabrics or this place, we use it to elicit social biographies, which is the Bible in popular education. But yes, however, it is not my space. It's not something of control. I don't have a space to be like, I have the keys and yo, come, welcome to come. Because if it was, they'd kick me out because I'd bring too much poor people around, whatever that means. We're in downtown, and that's just not how the game goes. I have to wear an aloha shirt to be here. I don't, but I have to. And you think the kids have this or the people have this. So I guess my thing is like a space that is available. We can only hijack spaces so much, and then we'll get kicked out eventually because it's not profitable. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing.
Thank you for that question. I just sort of want to reiterate. I think the work is so loving and sometimes so loving in a radical way that popular education, this kind of way of teaching, we've often just co-opted spaces. And so our dream is to not co-opt anymore. You know, we've done this in the University of Hawaii, we've done this in health institutions, we've done this in businesses, but it's always cost so much to do it on your own without a 501k, you know, without any kind of that economic structure. Can we do this sort of liberation pedagogy, this sort of liberation theology in a way that's find its original home within the church? And we haven't found that church yet that said, come, all of you, not just a little bit of you, leave it, you know, all of you, all of that which God had made you, queer, poor, Black, whatever it is, come all of you. We haven't yet found the church that said, we love all of you.
Also, like share, like it's not the money thing, or when I shared my concerns earlier about like funding and all of that, by all means, we do this without money. We've done this, and we still continue to do this work with no organization backing us, no institution backing us, no salary backing us. Cleo Jeff is unemployed. He's a stay-at-home daddy. Happy Father's Day to all the papas, and happy Father's Day, Debbie. Yeah, and I don't have a source of income as well, but I open space and we continue to do talk. And what Kristen said, sell the buildings and put up space, because when young baby was murdered, we did pop eds on the streets on the corner every single day. And what was funny, and what I want to share is, we did a circle, 5 boys, I have a photo of it, on a corner, and then one of the boys pull out the Bible. One of the boys pull out the Bible, doing name, home, ancestor, and he's like, this needs to be here too. And that's just like, I don't know what that meant. I don't know what omen that is, but we do a pedagogy that is rooted in the word, and they can feel it and they want to express it, but they just don't know how. And one, are they ever invited into these circles? So yeah, we can have space, we can have whatever, but it's really just the support and knowing that we can step in any way I can step forth with you. That's kind of what I'm saying. It's not the money. It's nice, but it's not.
I just also wanted to throw in, I don't even have it formed in my head, but I feel like sometimes we, or I don't know, as a conference or whatever, we go into this kind of work with like self-preservation in mind, or like trying to save the conference or the church and keep it going. But, you know, maybe it's okay that it doesn't keep going like this, but it's just, how are we gonna be allowed or whatever to just have the space to make our faith that has been passed down to us from generations, just to evolve that and yeah, do something new. So not maybe trying to yeah, keep us going forever in this way, but really just something new, but still carrying on that faith and what it needs to look like in our context today. Yeah.
We want to thank Jeff and Debbie and Kevin and Cassie and Kristen for sharing this evening. If you have questions for them later on, I think for now you can send them to Kristen, or we can eventually get their contact information out to you all. So again, we thank our wonderful presenters for sharing their stories and their hopes and their prayers. And we thank you for coming this evening and spending time with us.